Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another community conversation. My name is Kyla Hannington, and I'm the Public Outreach and Engagement Division Manager with the Prince George's County Office of Human Rights, the county's civil and human rights education and enforcement agency. With me today as co-hosts are Tiana Davis, the outreach specialist with the Office of Human Rights, and Dr. Audrey Lau from the Prince George's County Memorial Library System. The library system are our event partners for the Community Conversation series, and on behalf of both of our agencies, it is a pleasure today to welcome in conversation Lindsey Baker, the CEO of Maryland Humanities. Lindsey Baker leads statewide efforts at Maryland Humanities to build connections through stories, history, and conversation. Since joining the organization in 2020, she has guided Maryland Humanities through a period of renewal and innovation, launching the Humanities Now strategic plan, and emphasizing partnerships that demonstrate the humanities' power to foster understanding and strengthen communities across Maryland. A Marylander since 2008, and a museum nerd by training, Lindsey brings more than 2 decades of experience in public history, nonprofit leadership, and organizational strategy to her work advancing the humanities statewide. She lives in West Laurel with her husband, their 2 children, and an assortment of pets. So welcome, Lindsey. It is an honor to have you with us today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here this afternoon.
We're delighted to have you. Our office, the Office of Human Rights, has had some tangential connection to the One Maryland, One Book, and we'll talk more about that. But it's really great to get to hear more about the work that you do. And so we thought to get us all started, could you take a few minutes and just talk about Maryland Humanities and the work that you do?
Yeah, for sure. As I was preparing for this, I was thinking about the Office of Human Rights and the library system and how Maryland Humanities is kind of like in the same world as you all, at least in terms of what I interpret of what you do. And so I think that there's so much like overlap and connection between our work and your work that I'm hopeful it's exciting to talk about and we can all nerd out together. So Maryland Humanities, we're a statewide nonprofit. As an organization, we have been around for over 50 years. It's a complicated relationship right now, but originally we were created at the behest of the National Endowment for Humanities and all of the state and territorial humanities councils. There's 56 of us in every state and 6 territories. We're all created at the behest of the National Endowment for Humanities. The idea being that there's this large federal agency, and how does it ensure that the work happens at the state level and reaches all of the communities in the state? And so Maryland Humanities for many years was a granting agency, I think predominantly, and then we've kind of built programs up over the years. Our library folks will know One Maryland, One Book. That's one of our major initiatives we do in partnership with the Maryland State Library Agency through funding with them. And we actually partner with all of the county library systems except for one. I will not name that one on this call because, yes, Kim was our book, our 2025 book. So we pick a book. I don't actually pick it. We have a committee and we're always looking for new volunteers for that committee. It's made up of people who just love to read. You're on the committee, Kyla?
No, I'm volunteering. This is volunteering.
I mean, seriously, it's like writers, it's readers, it's teachers, professors. It's a really great assortment. We come up with a theme and then we take suggestions for the book. Usually we have like over 300 suggestions for the one book. We narrow it down to the top 10, top 3, and then the number 1 book is the book. We usually hold an author tour. We go all around the state with the author, 4 to 6 stops. But in addition to that, the part where we really dig into those partnerships is we usually have 200 to 300 events happening around the state related to the book. So not necessarily with the author, but related to the content and the themes and the pieces of the book that resonated with people. For that program, we've typically given away 5,000 to 10,000 books around the state. So the impact is big. We have a lot of people participating in One Maryland, One Book each year. And I will say, to your point, Kala, about volunteering, before I came to Maryland Humanities as the CEO, I was involved with almost every single program in one way or the other. And when I ran a local museum in Laurel, we participated in One Maryland, One Book each year. So I've read almost every One Maryland, One Book since 2008. And I don't know if that's something I should be proud of or embarrassed of, but on this call, I'm going to go with proud.
I'm just saying it's not just me. We have somebody else here in the chat who's like, okay, sign me up. So I think we might need to find out, as we're talking, how people can apply to be a volunteer to do
For sure, for sure. So the way you would sign up is probably the easiest thing is to go to our website and fill out the volunteer form, or to just email me. I'm sure my email can go in the chat at some point, lbaker@mdhumanities.org, and then I'll just connect you to the right people. But when you go to volunteer, no, you're going to be reading. You're going to be reading, and you're going to be sharing your opinion about which would be the best book for the state. So it's a fun thing to do. I think can't be a part of it as a CEO. I'm kicked out of the group, but I think people really enjoy it. And we actually have a lot of board members and even staff people come to us from that committee. So that's great. Another major program that people tend to know us for is Maryland History Day, which everyone on our Maryland History Day team hates when I say this, but it's like the science fair, but for history. Prince George's County has been very active in Maryland History Day. Before I came to Maryland Humanities, I worked with the county school system on that as well. And these kids, there's like a theme. Revolution, Reaction, Reform is this year's theme because of the 250th anniversary. But the kids can do a website, they can do a documentary, they can do an exhibit, they can do a paper, and I'm biased about this only because of how moving it always is. They can also do a performance. Oh, wow. And so that means that you have like 2 middle school students up there interpreting history through the performance that they created, and they have no additional people up there, and they give a 10-minute performance. It's like insanely impressive as someone who's never done theater, right? So that program is active all over the state. We have about 25 to 30,000 students each year participate in it. And then every first Saturday in May, we hold the state contest at UMBC. Another major program that we are known for is our grant funding. About 3 or 4 years ago, we switched entirely to general operating support for small nonprofits. So that means that if you run a nonprofit and you do work in the humanities, even if you don't self-identify as a humanities organization, you are eligible for, previously it was 10, funding got cut, now we're at 5,000 for general operating support. And for people in nonprofits, being able to pay for staff, being able to pay for lights, for rent, these are really important funds that aren't available statewide through any other source. So we're really proud of that. And we have reached every single county I think we've given out $2.35 million in the first 3 years. So it's a lot of money. We're really excited to be able to provide those resources. And then our other programs, Regional Humanities Networks is the thing I'm most excited about in terms of growth for Maryland Humanities. We just this spring are announcing that we are covering the whole state with our Regional Humanities Networks. And those are networks where we pull together, you all will hopefully appreciate this, people from libraries, people from schools, people from universities, people from museums, all these people who do work similar to one another, but don't necessarily get together often and have conversations. So through that program, we're not just bringing them together for networking and community problem solving, but also capacity building and technical assistance. And then I'm going to stop after this one. All right. The last program I'm going to mention is our Museum on Main Street program, where we bring a Smithsonian exhibit to rural areas, as rural as you can get in Maryland. And we partner, it's about a 2-year partnership, but the exhibit stays in each space for 6 weeks. But beforehand, we're working with them on building partnerships in their community, a companion exhibit, programs. And what we've seen is that this grows the capacity and the technical ability of the host sites, and the impact is decades long. We've seen huge projects come out of, if you're familiar with the Chesapeake Heartlands project, if you're not, Google it. Really cool project on the Eastern Shore. And that the impetus for that, the early stages of that was Museum on Main Street being over in Cambridge, I think it is. Okay, I'm done. I'm going to breathe.
Well, that was awesome. So thank you very much. And I said, in the beginning, was that our office with the Office of Human Rights, we have, I think for the last 5 years, done things related to One Maryland, One Book. And my sense is that for a lot of people, this is a place that they are familiar, even if they don't, I mean, hopefully they'll associate with Maryland Humanities, but even if they don't, if they know it through our office or they know it through the local library system, that they've heard of One Maryland, One Book, or maybe they've gone to a book group, or maybe they got a free book. And so one of the things that I think you talked about how it gets chosen, that there was a volunteer group that makes these decisions that Dr. Stewart and I are going to volunteer for. It sounds like we're going to apply. But one of the things is I was hoping you could talk to the people who are watching right now and tell them, like, why does One Maryland, One Book matter to Maryland? What is it bringing to the state and the communities?
Yeah. Okay. We're going to go off course on that answer, though. Are you ready for it?
I love going off course. Let's do it.
Okay. There's a very popular show out right now that maybe isn't safe for work, but we'll just say there's a very popular show that a lot of people are watching.
Is it about hockey?
It may be about hockey.
Maybe about hockey. Is it
maybe about hockey?
Everybody, get your phones out. Get your PVR. What do they call it these days? Get your streaming service ready. It is called, I'll say it, I'm willing to say it, Heated Rivalry.
Yes.
I haven't watched it, but I've had many people text me to be like, are you watching this show? So
yes.
Heated Rivalry. Okay. Yeah.
So Heated Rivalry. All right. You go on any of those social media platforms that you like. You got a million reels and posts and, takes on this show.
Okay.
I personally would make the argument that this show is a piece of humanities work. It is making us better understand the experiences of people who maybe live lives different from ours in a different place, have a different lived experience, different identity, whatever. I feel like One Maryland, One Book is like that on the small scale in Maryland. Mm-hmm. We just got to get those influencers on track with like posting nonstop about our One Maryland, One Book, and then we'll be there. But the idea that there is a shared piece of humanities work that you can read, and humanities work is like, who knows what that even means, right? I didn't know what humanities even meant before I took this job. I promise you. But like a book. It's that simple. A book, a story about a person or people or a moment in history or a moment in the future or something you might imagine. And then everybody can get together and have conversations about how it resonated with them, what it told them about lives that are different or the same as their own. The hot take that they have about their favorite chapter or whatever. I think it's really similar in that way of bringing people together to have a conversation about a piece of story or lives or whatever. So for why does it matter in Maryland? I was just explaining this to a colleague who's in tech, and I was saying, because the humanities make us better people. Mm-hmm. They make us more understanding of one another. They make us care more. They make us understand ourselves more. And that's what One Maryland, One Book is supposed to do for the state of Maryland. Heated rivalries here. We're right here, but we're still trying. We're still trying to grow everyone's humanity through our books.
Yeah. So it sounds like what we're saying to viewers is you can watch Heated Rivalry and also participate in One Maryland, One Book, that there is enough love to go around. What you've just said is also how we look at the outreach that we're doing in the Office of Human Rights, right? That if we can build understanding across diverse peoples and we provide opportunities, we want people to have moments when they see their own experiences reflected, and also many moments when they learn and experience perspectives that are different than their own. And so I love that you've said that is like just what the humanities are doing in general and what Maryland One Book and you folks are doing. I absolutely love that, and I really appreciate it. And I can also see that Tiana is ready with a question.
No, I also loved your description of what the humanities mean and how MD Humanities is helping Maryland. And so I was wondering, is there any chance that Maryland Humanities will create a book club? Like, you have One Maryland, One Book, but what about like a monthly or a quarterly book club? I don't know how it would work for the whole state, but yeah.
Tiana, I really love that question. Let me say that. Right now, in the moment of lots of lost funding from the federal government, I think my staff would throw something at me if I added one more program, because this year we're actually launching 3 or 4 new programs that I didn't mention at all. But I think, Tiana, one of the things that Maryland Humanities does really well is plug into already existing networks and organizations and communities. So we're trying to engage as many book clubs as we can around One Maryland, One Book. But maybe there's an opportunity for us to talk to a book club that wants to take on like a statewide footprint for that. I will give one plug that we have launched Humanities Heroes, which is an opportunity to give monthly. And we talk about it as you can be a part of Maryland's largest book club. We don't actually pull you together for conversation, but being a part of the Humanities Heroes allows us to continue the work and distribute the 5,000 to 10,000 books and work with the existing book clubs. But I really like the idea of us doing it statewide ourselves. That might be a 2027 goal.
Yeah, I was going to say you need instead of a top 10, you need a top 12. And then you pick one, or maybe top 13, and then you do to 12 as your, book club picks each month. But just
cool. Actually, I really like that.
Like a plug for us. I mean, I'm looking at this top 10 list for 2025. And just for those of you who are watching, the 2026 theme is revolution, reaction, and reform, which is where my next question is going to come from. But I will say that we have actually read some of these books through our Lunch and Learn or through our programs here with the Office of Human Rights. And so I guess what I would like you to just kind of go a little bit more into is the types of books that we are actually looking at, because these are not the newest books.
Yeah. Are you looking at the newly released top 10 for 2026?
I am.
Okay. Well, first I will just say, to your point about making each book a month and going to like 12 books, I usually take our top 10 and it's a reading list for the year for me. Okay. So plug for all of the listeners, every book on the top 10 is going to be a good book. Every book may not be your cup of tea, but every book on the top 10 is a quality book that a lot of people will enjoy. The books that are on the list this year was a little bit different. We learned from doing Kin in 2025, which was, I think, overwhelmingly the most well-received One Maryland, One book since I've been at Maryland Humanities. And that book is a story of Carol Boston Weatherford and her son created this book. She wrote the poetry. He did the illustrations. But it's a story reclaiming the past of their family and their ancestors and the people who enslaved their ancestors. And as a museum nerd, as I was identified as earlier, it's like I read the book and I was like, oh my God, this is what museum people do. You're trying to create a narrative. And Carol did so much research at the Maryland Center for History and Culture, Maryland Archives, the Y Plantation, which is the setting for most of the book. She did all of this research. And then I learned a new term, use critical fabulation to create these like poetry pieces from each person's perspective. So imagining what they would have been thinking and what they would have been feeling. So all of this is an aside. You're noticing a theme I'm seeing of asides. That we learned Maryland themes and Maryland authors are actually really well received in Maryland. And everybody's listening like, yeah, we would have guessed that, Lindsey. But, you do a program for 15 years one way and you don't realize, oh, there are other ways to do this. So this year's list, I would say we really hope to get as many Maryland connections on there, whether it's a Maryland author or it's a Maryland story. And that was the big you have like the theme and then you have like the Maryland connection as the two pieces, I think, that really weighed heavily on the top 10. I haven't read every book on there. I've read a couple of them, but we just got the top 10. So that's on my reading list for 2026. But usually we have a mix of young adult as well as adult books or, books for adults. And then I know there's some books of essays in there as well. So we kind of have a mix of different kinds of books usually.
And a graphic novel.
Is there a graphic novel?
You do. Yeah, Silent Voices.
I didn't know that yet.
Yep. Okay. We did him I guess it was December. We had him on our Lunch and Learn, and just a fantastic, fantastic book. So
it starts in Langley Park. So talk about local. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
But these books are readily available. But what I love about them, and I guess what I want to kind of get into this is that, Kin really tied into the America's 250th coming up. And, we're going to be definitely seeing it again, I think, as a book club. But Talk a little bit about this theme for this year, this revolution, reaction, and reform. How did it come about? Like, why did you pick it? Or is it because it feels a little snarky? And I'm just curious if it's tongue in cheek.
Yeah, that is how widely will this be viewed? National History Day is the national organization, nonprofit. It's actually, I think it's headquartered in Maryland. Every year they come up with a theme for Maryland History Day. And this year we decided to tie a lot of our programming into Maryland History Day and to that theme, Revolution, Reaction, Reform. So that's actually a National History Day theme. I will not speculate as to how that was received at the national level. I will just say we are just using the theme that was already established years ahead of time as being the theme for this year for National History Day, and we've used it for our programs.
One of the questions, one of the things that you talked about, and that one of my colleagues here had a question about, but I'm going to grab it. You mentioned a museum on Main Street. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really glad you mentioned that, because that was one of the things that we had wanted to talk about. Can you just talk more about what that is? And how the partnership came to be, because this seems like a big deal, bringing museum exhibits for 6 weeks into rural communities, which is so inaccessible I have lived in very rural places, which I know very rural and Maryland might not go together, but yeah, having been in very rural places, I recognize like just access to anything is enormous. So it's an incredible gift that you're bringing these communities.
Yeah. So this year's exhibit is called Spark, Places of Innovation. And it's about how communities come together and problem solve. I would say if we tried to do this and launch the tour this year, communities might respond completely differently, because communities right now are coming together to solve problems we didn't really anticipate, I think, in 2024, most of 2025. So Spark, Places of Innovation it's a partnership with the Smithsonian. Like I said, it comes through the Traveling Exhibition Services sites. I think it's Smithsonian Institution Traveling Exhibition Services. And they actually have multiple exhibits available that we pay for as an organization, but they travel all over the country. There are other states doing this. We're not the only ones. Other councils, humanities councils, do this. And what happens is it comes in these big, huge crates. And you work with our staff on unpacking it and on figuring out what your companion exhibit will be and how that will be related. But what's really exciting about bringing a Smithsonian exhibit into rural areas, like you said, is there are often families that don't get to go all the way to DC. I know we just had the exhibit at Accokeek, which is in Prince George's County. And, in theory, that's not far from Washington, D.C., but there are many people, I think, in that community that aren't getting to go to the Smithsonian's, but they can make it over to Accokeek. So, yeah, it's definitely increasing access to quality exhibits for the public, which is kind of the hook to get host sites, right? Like host sites are like, oh, okay, our numbers are going to spike when we have this short-term exhibit that's been created by the Smithsonian. And not only are they marketing it for themselves, we're marketing it for them as well to kind of push people to their site. So in that way, it's I think very useful for the community, but also very useful for the organization in growing the number of people who know that they exist. I can say this because I ran a tiny historical society for 10 years. I cannot tell you how many people who lived literally across the street and would tell me I didn't know what that was. And so a lot of small museums, small sites deal with this. We are expanding who hosts the exhibit. Previously, it was mostly historical societies and museums. But for example, the next site will be UMES, University of Maryland Eastern Shore. So it's not always, and I think the first kickoff was at, I think it was College of Southern Maryland, their innovation lab. So we've done a couple of universities. We went to Accokeek, which is a historic site and a national park site. And it's just like a variety of places that we can go into. But to your point, Kyla, it's growing the access to those quality exhibits for the community and also for the site, they're growing people's understanding of who they are and what they do.
I'd like to go back to the volunteering. I know people can volunteer to help with One Maryland, One Book, but are there other ways people can get involved with Maryland Humanities?
Man, if I had seeded these questions, I don't think they could have been any better. Thanks for that question, Tiana. I think that my Maryland History Day staff will come pull me out of the chair if I did not mention that we always need Maryland History Day judges. This is it's such a cool experience. I mean, you are with these middle and high schoolers and you are working, usually they put you with a team and you're given plenty of training, plenty of resources. We got that stuff built out. Don't worry about that. And then you get to talk to the kids about their project. Why did they decide on this topic? What resources did they use? What made them do it this way and not that way? And essentially, you're judging for the day at UMBC on the first Saturday of May. We provide lunch and breakfast. And then you get to meet all these kids who are super excited about their projects. So that's another major volunteer opportunity that we have. I'll also say, if you're attending this or listening to it afterwards, you're probably enough of a humanities nerd that you might want to be on our board. So that's another major volunteer opportunity. We have a very large board, but we have a wonderful board that's made up of people from colleges and universities, nonprofits, we have people in the business sector, just all kinds of different places that our board members come from. But the thing that they share is a passion for the humanities and ensuring access around the state.
I guess I will ask the next one, since we seem to be going in a circle. But I guess one of the things I wanted to ask you personally is that you started in 2020, which was not a good time. We had, everything was shut down and all those things, but now we're also not in a good time. And I guess one of the things I wanted to ask you is how do you find yourself defending the humanities right now? And what is your kind of favorite way to say, this is why we matter? Do you bring up the programming? Do you bring up the people? Do you bring up the experiences? How do you meet those challenges?
It's a good question. No surprise here. We're going somewhere else first.
Okay, it's fine.
In 2015, when Freddie Gray was murdered, I was running a tiny historical society, and I was at a conference in Atlanta for museum people. And I remember thinking, what are we doing? What are museums doing that people see this moment and they can't place it in historical context? They can't understand that this is not the first time that this has happened. They can't understand, the whole debate between the uprising and the riots, or whatever the term is you want to use. The lack of historical context and understanding for activism just blew my mind. And I think I feel that way today too. I feel in some ways what have you done with your life? A little bit just un poquito like that. We are trying to build connections between people. And right now I feel like I've never felt further apart from some people. And I think a lot of people feel that way. But when we talk about what our work is, I don't necessarily talk about, some of it's about the programming and some of it's more theoretical. Don't you want to know your neighbor and understand them better? Doesn't everybody want to like their neighbor? That feels fundamental to me as a human. I would much rather understand that even though they're different from me, I still understand where they're coming from and a little bit more about their life. And that comes from the humanities, or it comes from conversation. But right now, people aren't having those conversations. So how do I defend the humanities? It feels like, Audrey, right now, people either get it or they don't. And most people, I would say, that I talk to understand that they would rather know and like the people in their community than not know and like them. And fundamentally, whether that comes from reading a book together and talking about it, or it comes from listening to a presentation of a ninth grader talking about the history of the country that they're from that you never knew about, but now that you're a judge, now you do know about it. I think all those pieces are really important. Right now, we also, part of the humanities is civic engagement and understanding democracy. And like, I don't know any other reason, any other time, 2020, 2025. I listen to Heather Cox Richardson, so she gives me like the long game of like, okay, this also happened in 1898. I'm like, well, now I feel great. Like, now I feel like we're going to get through this. But this 2020 and 2025, and I'll say 2015, all those moments felt like right now we need this more than ever. And while I do have self-reflection of like, what are you doing that you haven't saved the world, right? I think nobody goes into humanities work not trying to make the world a better place. I just have to keep plugging away and keep finding funding, keep finding ways to support my staff, ways to engage humanities across the state. But I know like we're not going to save it. We're not going to save democracy by ourselves. Everybody has to engage in that.
And I think one of the things that I think is so fantastic is that these books are free. Mm-hmm. We give out, I know we get a ton of them. We give them out to, I mean, they don't go very far to 19 branches, but they go far and they go to a lot of different hands. And it almost seems though, don't you think that reading is an act of like revolution in and of itself these days? It's such a, we hear that the average person reads one book a year. And I always say to people, if you're going to read that one book, make it one Marilyn one book. Because
love that.
Yeah, it just seems a little radical sometimes to be like, I've read 2 books, but those of us who are in libraries, but I do think, I guess one of the things I'd like you to just kind of speak on is when you give to the Maryland Humanities, whether you do it as a volunteer or you put your money where your heart is, basically, what are people giving to?
I mean, people are giving to an organization that does a number of things across the state to try to bring people together. And like I said about the books, not everything is going to be your vibe. It's the same for our programs. I have 2 kids, but listen, if you don't want to be around kids, Maryland History Day is not for you, right? But it's still important, right? And so your funds can go towards things that you don't have to be engaged in, that you don't have to do, but your funds also go towards supporting programs that you care about and programs that you want to attend. So yeah, I think as an organization, we not only have a really wonderful, kind of caring, deeply engaged, deeply thoughtful staff, but we also have literally hundreds of partners from museums, libraries, universities. I mean, human rights offices, we have so many partners that there's, I think, a little something there for everyone. And when you donate to our organization, you're saying, I care about this work and I want it to continue, especially right now. I mean, we were doged and we have not received our funding back. That was over half of our operating budget. So a very significant number of my partner councils have either had to stop all programs, furlough or fire staff. I have lots of colleagues who were executive directors who have lost their jobs because there's no funding for it when your whole model from inception was a partnership with the federal government that was ended in a late night email. You don't have the opportunity to recover after that. So you're keeping these programs alive in Maryland when you donate.
I want to follow up on Audrey's previous question because, as you said, we all work in the humanities, and I think we all know that it can be very easy to burn out, or if you're not burnt out, you can sort of end up in a place where you're like, why am I even doing this? What good is this? What are you doing to protect your peace, to sort of step away from the hard work, even though not everyone might think it's hard work. It is hard work, emotionally, physically, whatever. What are you doing outside of work to just sort of not lose your mind with just everything that's going on?
My favorite topic. Thank you, Tiana. Number 1, my work phone is turned off every night and every weekend, usually starting at 4. So you all got me later than I normally stay on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Work phone is turned off. Very few people, almost no one texts me on my personal phone on the weekends and in the evenings. That's number one. I think number two is organizationally, and I'll say that I recognize my positionality as a CEO to be able to do that. And I do my best to try to ensure that all staff feels empowered to do that. So we close as an organization, we close for at least a week, 3 times a year. Around holidays. This winter, we closed for 2 weeks, the way the timing, I think almost 2 weeks. I definitely took 2 weeks. We have really, really focused on our internal policies and procedures, supporting all staff to take a break and to rest. And so that's, I think in 2026, I don't know, sometimes rest is political. I don't know why. I think we all need rest, but apparently some of us deserve it and some of us don't. And so I try to ensure that everyone on staff knows that you got to log off, you got to stop, especially in jobs like ours. Like I could work 24 hours a day and not be done. There's no question in my mind. And it's been that way ever since I've entered the professional sector. But I know that I have to turn off, and I try to get staff to do that as well. But in terms of me personally, sorry for those of you on this call who know me and already know this. I'm a big soccer player. It's how I met my husband. I played in college. I'm still playing. I just joined a pickup game with men who are, I want to say they're old men, but I realize they're actually probably my age, and that's harmful to me, but I will take it. Soccer is a big thing. Kyla mentioned earlier, we have too many pets, and I have 2 kids. So I don't know if that protects your peace, but it definitely pulls you away from work when you're not at work. And I think the biggest thing that has really been helpful is making sure that I'm staying active, that I am in therapy, that I'm taking days off, because like you said, a lot of people might not recognize how emotionally heavy this work is. Understanding, I'm essentially doing nonprofit management and leadership, but at the end of the day, the work that I'm doing about narratives, about people, that's heavy work.
I'm gonna give you another softball, because I love history nerds. I love museum nerds. So your favorite Maryland museum?
Ooh, okay. Gosh, you want to get me in trouble?
No, not at all. You can give a top few if you'd rather.
Okay, top few. Speed round. I love me a speed round. Laurel Historical Society, I ran for 10 years. I have a soft spot in my heart for that organization. Let's do, okay, Audrey, because we're in Prince George's County, let's focus on Prince George's County, and that gets me off the hook a little bit. Okay. I love Riversdale and the work that they're doing with descendant communities. Maya is wonderful. At Surratt House, Veronica is on our board, and they're reinterpreting so much. I haven't been back since she started there, and so that's on my list to get back to. College Park Aviation Museum is a favorite when you have kids. I always bring my kids to their Latinas in Aviation day, but we also just go, when it's rainy or cold or whatever. And then a personal local favorite that I go to all the time when kids have off a day of school is Montpelier Arts Center, which is also, I'm literally just naming park and planning sites. I'm sorry, but that's the reality in Prince George's County. So many wonderful sites, but Montpelier Arts Center, which is in South Laurel, I love to go there because the galleries on a random day are usually pretty quiet, and I get to have access to art with my kids on their day off. And so it's like a ritual now that I'll take them there and then go to lunch, and then I've done a thing on their day off, and I am not expected to do much more, but it's low key and quiet and not a lot of people and easy parking. So that's my speed round. And if you're listening to this and I didn't name your museum in Prince George's County, I also meant your museum, and Accokeek. Sorry, I'll add Accokeek. Love Accokeek and being outside. I've brought many of my friends from soccer from Southern Prince George's County to Accokeek.
All right, and I'm going to add, so the Office of Human Rights, we work also with a lot of Prince George's parks and planning sites. And if you're listening and Lindsey didn't mention your site, you should email me, and then we'll come out and we'll connect with you, and we'd love to partner with you. So taken from the Office of Human Rights, We love all of the great museums and historical societies in the county. And I do want to, as we're talking about you personally, Lindsey, I have a personal question as well, which is like, can you talk about your journey to how did you come to Maryland Humanities? Like what about it inspired you and how did you make the jump over?
So I ran Laurel Historical Society for 10 years. While I was there, I had a really supportive board to let me get engaged at the national and regional level. So I sat on the American Alliance of Museums Small Museum Administrative Committee. I was the chair of that. I was on the program committee for the American Alliance of Museums. I was a peer reviewer. So I was running a tiny museum, but also getting to understand what capacity building and technical assistance looks like for sites. And then I left there, and for 2 years I ran a heritage area, if you know what that is, in Baltimore and Howard counties, Patapsco Heritage Greenway. And that was really cool because that combined 3 different things that I love. That was history, recreation, and the environment. Mm-hmm. And so that job, you know, I could go from having a panel discussion about, you know, Indigenous women-led like movements in history to a stream cleanup to, you know, doing a trail race. Like it was all 3 things. It was really cool. But the position opened up. This is my Maryland Humanities origin story, which I don't know how many people know. The position opened up for Maryland Humanities, and I had been, like I said, involved in every way, in every program already. And I constantly would email their then executive director, Phoebe Stein. And I would just be like, oh, I love this program. Oh, I love your newsletter. Oh, I love this. You know, just constantly emailing her about how big a fan I was of Maryland Humanities. And I saw her in Annapolis while we were both in Annapolis advocating for funds. And I was talking to her like, oh, I saw the job opened up. You know, where are you going next? Blah, blah, blah. And she said, you know, you should apply. And she wasn't involved in the process. You know, it's the board and a recruiting agency. I said, Phoebe, I can't apply for that. You have to have a PhD. I only have a master's. And Phoebe said, no, that's not real. You don't have to have a PhD for this, which like functionally, I know you don't need a PhD to run a nonprofit, but I thought the organization would require it. So I applied. For those of you on the call who ever get a rejection notice, I actually was knocked out in the first round. Spoiler. And I think I applied in like February or March. The world shut down, right? I was going through the application process. I did not advance. And then I went and had a baby in May. And I remember I was like on leave and I got a call from the recruiters asking me, would you consider re-entering? We keep talking about you, the candidates that we've gotten to. We just keep talking about Lindsey Baker. Wow. So would you come back? So I had to go back through the whole process that the other candidates had gone through. And in August of 2020, 3 months after having a child during COVID, I started at Maryland Humanities. So it was quite a roller coaster. I always say 10 out of 10 do not recommend starting a job 3 months after having a baby during a, you know, worldwide pandemic. But I lasted, it's been 5 years, and it's been a tough 5 years due to the national things that have gone on. But I'm happy with where we are at this point.
Yeah, that is an amazing story. And so my takeaway is apply for a job, get rejected, have a baby. Well, and the job will come to you. That's
I'm not sure how much he had to do with it, but he would probably love to claim it. Okay. But I think the lesson, I know you're kidding, but I think the lesson is really like, don't take rejections to heart. Right. I mean, it's just a part of the process.
And also, like, we don't know what is in, you know, I think I have my old executive director would talk about like that her responsibility was to lift over the rocks and see what was there. That was her job. Mm-hmm. But, you know, things would unfold as they were meant to, as long as she was doing her work, you know. Yeah. And so I think that's the other part is like you keep persevering and you keep doing the work. That is great. We're so glad that you are part of Maryland Humanities and, you know, I'll speak on behalf of the library here too, as well as the Office of Human Rights, that it just means so much to our agencies, all the work that you're doing and hearing the partners that you have, which are so much the partners that we share. And so I want to just go back to, you know, I think we've touched on this, but I really want to bring it home for viewers. And actually, as I'm talking. I do want people who are watching to know, like, please type questions or comments you have into the chat. We will share them with Lindsey. We have 15 minutes left, so there's lots of time for audience questions, viewer questions. Please type them in. We'll share them as we can. Did I forget what I was going to say? No, I did not. I did not forget what I was going to say. It was close, which was, we've talked about the humanities. We've talked about democracy. The Office of Human Rights and the library system have a partnership series where we talk about voting, democracy in action. We talk about the fact that we know that human rights and democracy go hand in hand, that you're really probably not having one without the other. And we see this intersecting with some of what you've already said about what the humanities do when they teach us about one another. And so I'm just thinking for people who are at home, and I think we've talked about some fun things to do, but let's talk more about like why it matters in the world that we're living in to engage.
You think people don't know?
Well, I'd like to make sure that they have a takeaway. They're like, Kyla wants me to watch Heated Rivalry and
engage. Yeah. I mean, I think it's very discouraging to me to live in a country where I know that my values are not being reflected in my tax dollars, to be like really frank. And that didn't start in 2025, right? This is, for me, a thing that I have felt and been aware of for the last few years. But I think that the way you really truly engage democracy, if you're just a normal person like me, you're not a politician, you're not a lobbyist, you're not a whatever, is locally, right? Local politics actually impact you in so many ways. In a normal administration, let's say that, in a national normal administration, I don't think you feel the up and down quite as much, right? But locally is where you feel the up and down. Locally is where, your taxes go up, or you have a high BGE bill and you don't know who to call to ask about that. Or, even here's an example at my local elementary school. There's a student who's disabled, who is not able to access the playground, who doesn't have a bathroom because there is no handicap bathroom in the school, who's going to the bathroom in the school nurse's bathroom. And so I talked to his mom. She's like, I've talked to the principal. I've, emailed somewhere else. No one's responding to me. So I reached out to my county council person and was like, hey, why is this, like, we don't even have a handicap bathroom at an elementary school? Is this normal? Like, what can we do here? And my county council person put us in touch with the school board member. And so the school board member is going to come out and do a visit to the school. And like, the only reason I knew to reach out to my county council person is because I already have a relationship with him. I already know who he is. I have his number. I can text him. And maybe not everyone's going to get to that level, but knowing who your elected official is all the way up is actually really fundamental to engaging in democracy and advocating for your community. And it doesn't have to be that you're advocating, Prince George's County came out strong against data centers, right? We've had really wonderful displays of how you can get involved and make a change in your community. Maybe data centers aren't your thing, but maybe you want to make sure that your friend's kid can go to the bathroom without having to go to the nurse's office. So I would say that whatever your passion is, whatever the issue is, you really can't get much movement on it until you know who to talk to. And usually that's an elected official, or it's a nonprofit probably, or a county agency or a state agency. But the way to really engage in democracy is to start to know those things. And you don't have to do everything. You don't have to advocate for everything. You don't have to be everywhere. But this prepares you for the moment that you do need something.
I'd like to know what you guys have coming up next. I know earlier you mentioned that there are 3 new programs. You probably can't talk about them yet, but what is on the horizon for Maryland Humanities?
I can talk about them.
Okay.
So we are actually administering the Poetry Out Loud contest for the Maryland State Arts Council. So now we're the home of that, which is really exciting. This is the first year we're going to do that. That's a statewide poetry recitation contest. There's more details on our website. I don't think the website is live for this yet. Maybe it is. Like literally, I was getting emails right before this this call. How do I explain this? The Smithsonian Folklife Festival partnered with all the state humanities councils to run 250th programming in our states. So we actually have 6 programs planned starting in January through the fall related to the 250th. The first will be January 24th, actually at Accokeek. So good thing I mentioned them earlier. And each one of them is completely different. So there will be details for that on our website soon. We're expanding our regional humanities networks, like I said, to cover the whole state, which is really exciting. We just launched our first traveling exhibit that is not through the Smithsonian. This was researched, designed, and created through Maryland Humanities and our partners. And the one that we just launched is actually on the freedom of the press. And so it ties the first, the first publishers in Maryland to the history of freedom of the press, to the importance of press in communities, Black and brown communities that are not covered. And that exhibit's going to travel the state as well. And then, I just received an email, like we are just on such a roller coaster with all sources of federal funding that something that we were really excited about may not happen now because a grant that they said we got and then said we weren't going to be able to utilize and then said we were, and now they're saying we're not. I mean, it's literally this type of situation. But our goal with that funding was to have a statewide humanities conference, which we've never been able to do. And so I don't know if that's completely out, but if there's any chance that it moves forward, we're going to do our best to make it happen.
So do you guys only rely on grants, or do you do any sort of fundraising?
Yeah, well, I think some people would argue grants are fundraising, but we definitely do this, we do individual giving fundraising. We do fundraising with corporate entities, and our regional humanities networks, we are moving to a membership model with the goal that we can continue that work without tying it to any external funding. And instead that work can happen whether or not the federal government or whoever thinks that we align with their priorities, that we're serving the members of the regional humanities networks with professional development, networking, capacity building through their membership dollars.
You just mentioned the Poetry Out Loud. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not familiar with that. Can you talk to us more about what that is?
I can, but it's our first year, so I'm still learning.
Okay.
But it's a contest that kids participate in around the state, and they choose from a catalog of poems. They don't actually write their own poetry, and they recite the poem on a stage. And it's I think it's a really engaging program. We're hoping to grow it. It's our first year, so I think it's probably going to start a little bit small, but we really have this wonderful model of Maryland History Day, which is 25 to 30,000 students. So getting to that would be amazing.
Yeah, I think we're in the works for some of that in terms of being a location. So watch this space. So.
So when we have one of our viewers says that they sponsor a poetry club. So it sounds like as we get more about that, we can, for our viewers, maybe make sure you're going. I will say this, we're putting links in the chat. If you are watching on demand later, you're not watching us live, make sure you hit that live chat button. You'll be able to do it afterwards, and you'll see some of the links we're sharing, and do visit mdhumanities.org as well. And you'll be able to go through that website and find the links that we're sharing. We are just pulling from that website. So we really invite you to go check it out. I think we have time for one more question. So I'm going to ask one, and if we have more time, then Argentiana, feel free to jump back in. But I'm going to say, you have veterans book groups. Am I understanding this right? Can you talk about those?
Yeah, the veterans book groups are a program where we have multiple generations of veterans from different wars and different experiences who come together and read books that they choose. I think that's a really important part of the program. There's a facilitator at each site. And these groups, the background is that we've actually had trouble maintaining funding that's not from the National Endowment for Humanities for these groups, because most funders want to see like growth, like, oh, you had 40 people participate last year, now we want 50, or we want 60, or we want 100. And really the power of these groups is that intimate conversation and the relationships that they've built so that they can open up about their experiences. And so I'm actually glad you brought this up, Kyla. This is a program that this year we actually are not funding, but our partners think it's so important that they're carrying it forward with their own funding for this 1 year while we support it and try to help as much as possible with logistics and things like that as we have in the past. But it's one that we definitely need to receive the federal funding again. And I think most people, like, on any side of the political, spectrum or anywhere on it, would agree that supporting vets is actually a worthwhile use of federal funds. And so we are hoping that we do get that money in FY26 from the feds, so that a program that we think is really important, but is a hard sell to funders, can continue for those vets around Maryland. And Kyla, those happen. There's actually one in Prince George's County. See all of this, like, I don't know, it's like we're all together. It happens at Montpelier Arts Center, actually.
Oh, okay.
But not when my kids are running through the galleries. It's a different time.
That is great. And I think this is a good time to just kind of summarize for people, like, things that I have heard. So first of all, if you value the work of Maryland Humanities, there's many ways to get involved. One is, they have an opportunity for you to donate, become a humanities hero. There's things that you personally can do if you're in the financial situation where you're looking to make, a small or large private donation. But also, like, elected officials work for you, right? You're the boss. So if you want, to support the work of Maryland Humanities, another thing you can do is write to your elected representatives locally and federally and express your love for them and your wish that they and all humanities organizations are getting that kind of funding so that they can continue bringing the great programming. And of course, the other thing you can do is come out and go to the programs. And which are, I believe, free, right? I don't want to lie. They're open to the public. You go, you're just like, hey, I want to read one book. I want to come out to Maryland History Day. I want to see what the kids are doing with poetry. There's so many ways to get involved. And as I said, we've been putting these, the website up there. I'm going to say it again, mdhumanities.org. But there's so many ways to get involved. And we hope that you're able to do those. We are, as you can probably tell from the fact that I'm now talking length, we are out of time. Lindsey, it has been so great to have you with us. Thank you for taking the time to be with us and for all the work that you and Maryland Humanities are doing for the entire state. And for those of you watching at home, again, whether you're watching live or tuning in on demand later, thank you for choosing to spend your time with us. You are why we do what we do. As I said before, please check the live chat. If you're watching later, you can see some of those more detailed links, or just go to mdhumanities.org and spend some time on their website, seeing all the very many things that they do and the many ways that you can connect with them. And you can also find them on social media, which is at mdhumanities across all platforms. We also invite you to see all the great things that our friends, the library, are doing each and every day by going to ptcmls.info/events. They have 443 things every single day for you. And then please check out the Office of Human Rights at civilrights.mypdc.us to learn more about our office. And we would love to see you at the things that we have coming up, including our Lunch and Learn series, which is ramping up again for 2026. Our first one's on January 27th when we welcome Joe's Movement Emporium. So again, thank you everybody for being with us. Lindsey, it was great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Bye, everyone.